right, so welcome to BoneChat discussion number 42. We all know medical conferences have become less and less useful every year for some reason. The old days of just throwing a booth out there to be a focal point of the company and drawing interest is just gone. So how does an individual or a company get the most out of a conference? Well, Ted is going to teach us how right now. Handing the mic over to Ted.
Great. Thank you, Tiger. Welcome, everyone, this afternoon. I really want to make this an interactive session. It's kind of a topic that came up as the BoneChat community, as we were discussing what are some good future topics. And, you know, one of the questions was these investor conferences, because many of the members and attendees here this afternoon are entrepreneurs or company founders or service providers to, innovative, emerging musculoskeletal companies. So every penny is precious, clearly. And the question was, is specifically the LSI, the Life Science Intelligence meeting that they used to hold, once a year in Dana Point, California, worth it, the expense? And I've been to 4 of them now over the last 4 years, so I definitely have an opinion on it. And I'm going to share, about that. But then I added just trade shows also, professional society meetings, whether it's a national or international society or they are different. Obviously, if it's a regional meeting or even a state level meeting, the dynamics are different, but it's still money, and it's investment that you make to take the time and the money to try and maximize your success. So I'm going to share my experience and thoughts, and I'd love to just kick it out to the group because there's a lot of experience here. Let me pull up the presentation. That's the back end of it. Okay. Can you guys see this? Is this on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So this is the topic for today: is maximizing your success at Medtech Conferences, investors and trade shows in 2024 and beyond. Just quick introduction of myself. I have 4 decades now of experience now. Just feel blessed that I've had the opportunity to be in the med device industry for this long. So what I do today with a very deep domain expertise in orthopedics, I think I only have about 18 months when I was outside of an orthopedic company or project. And that was GI endoscopy with Boston Scientific. And I ran, right back to orthopedics as soon as I could. But, today I do a go-to-market commercial strategy and execution through my firm, Bird Medical Group and Associates, key opinion leader, distributor, or market development activities, market access activities. And this is primarily for smaller companies, for startups, whether it's U.S. or international companies looking to plan ahead and be successful when they get into the U.S. market. Also have an active practice in BD, business development, whether that's licensing technology from surgeons or entrepreneurs or companies that are looking for a strategic partnership or an exit, and M&A through private equity firms that are looking to do roll-up strategies and looking for an industry expert to kind of advise them on suitable targets and assets and even integration activities once the deals are done. And then I do serve on boards and advisory roles for boards and CEOs or management teams, as well as, depending on the project, an operating role for whether it's a VC venture studio or venture capital or private equity firm that's looking for, or even a company that's looking for operating leadership, depending on the project. And recently, in recent years, quite a bit of experience in capital fundraising. These are the logos of some of the companies in the last 30 years. I didn't even put the ones before that, which are no longer around, like Dionix and Richards, that are now part of Smith & Nephew. I had trouble even finding their logo. But this is kind of ones in the last 10 to 15 years. Today, I'm active with chairman of the board of Askel Healthcare, which is a Helsinki, Finland-based cartilage defect repair company. Real exciting clinical stage company. To the left of that is Orthison, which is a UK-based university spin out from Oxford University with Also a class 3, just preclinical, approaching their clinical stage for an injectable biostructural gel for low back pain. Very, very exciting. So active with that as well as a number of other projects. So let's get into the meat on the bone here. So what I'm going to cover and try and leave time for discussion, and please jump in as I go through this. But it's as with anything else, it's all about planning. The advanced planning and preparation really matters. I mean, whether it's an investor conference or it's a trade show, if you just kind of register your company, buy your booth, go to FedEx, Kinko's, and print your banner and your tablecloth and your flyers and show up and hope for success. That's all you have, which is a hope and a prayer. That is not the way to be successful. So my message really resonates around not just planning carefully, well ahead of any meeting to make sure you're getting a decent return on your investment, but also being very active, because today's world, much of it is online, like we're meeting today. Social media, brand and marketing awareness has moved into the digital realm. So having a well thought out and designed campaign to maximize your success is important, both for investor conferences and for trade shows. We'll talk about that specifically. So then I'm going to just talk specifically about investor conferences and my experience in the really post-pandemic era of today with a few of those, what works, what doesn't. Professional society meetings, which I, like others on the call, decades of experience, and they've really morphed and changed. And many people today, recognize that, are they worth it? And ask the question, is it worth all the expense of these meetings? And, I would suggest and make my case that they are, as long as you, properly set out your goals and objectives for being there and do the advanced planning and do the work while you're there and the follow-up once you've finished. Then I'm going to cover some best practices, both for investor conferences and professional society meetings. And this is always fun about the what not to do. And a lot of this was actually the what to do in the 1980s and the 1990s. And if you went to some of the big meetings in orthopedics like AAOS and, just bigger meetings like that's probably always the big granddaddy is, of course, the AAOS. But others, it's shocking what, if you try to get away with what we used to get away with back then, and we'll talk about it. This is where the stories will come out. I want to hear from everybody on the computer today about some of your experiences, about what worked, what didn't, and get your opinions. So I do want to make it interactive. Before I dive in, is there anything else that Tiger or anyone else you think I'm grossly missing here?
No, just jump in.
So as I said, advanced planning matters. It truly does. It's very important, as with anything else in business, to be successful. Establish clear goals and objectives for each meeting. One fairly broad goal or objective, if you're still under the radar as a company. Now, there's a way to do this without going to a meeting. And again, you do that through today, social media and digital marketing. But, face-to-face does matter. At the end of the day, you can't do everything by Zoom, Teams, Google Meets, or any other, platform. When you're meeting face-to-face with someone, it does make a huge difference, whether it's an investor or a customer or a distributor or a clinical advisory board. It just makes that much better when you're in person. So it does help when you're coming out of stealth mode to be there and be at a meeting, but look at each of the meetings and look at the expenses and if you're new to this, feel free to reach out to me or others on this community to get feedback, and we can tell you, whether you're thinking correctly or not, if it's the right time for you to spend money on physically going to a meeting or if you're ready for it. But, also, as I said, meeting in person with your existing customers, your key customers that you're very important to defend your position in the marketplace with those customers and reinforce, why they're working with you and strengthen that relationship. But also your partners, your distributors, your maybe supply chain partners, depending on the meeting you're attending. Your strategic partners you may have, a licensed product with, just to spend time covering key business topics, but also improving, your relationship in person with them. And then most importantly, and this is what most people generally think about, you say, what's the purpose of going to a trade show, outside of at least med device or orthopedics, they're trying to get leads, get new business, meet new customers, investors, partners, and that's very important too. That you can do that, but you have to plan for that and do that appropriately. And that's what I actually have developed leads to drive new revenue and investments. So I'm going to come back to that later in terms of how you actually, the way to do that, is, in my mind, versus the way not to do that. You don't walk up and down the halls with a lead pad and try and stop somebody and say, hey, do you work in the lumbar spine? Are you a neurosurgeon? Are you an orthopedic surgeon? Can I get your name? That's not the way to do it. But research, again, this applies to both investors as well as customers and partners, whether it's distributors or other strategic partners. Do your research ahead of time, as you would with any just one-on-one meeting or sales call. Really understand the dynamics. I'm just going to excuse myself for 1 second, guys. Hang on a minute.
No worries. One of the things Ted did mention is one of the goals for a lot of companies is to recruit salespeople. So you can run around, and it's a great place to meet potential reps or distributors. If you can just get them out of their booth. Welcome back, Ted.
Yep, thank you. I had a dog emergency there I had to take care of. All right, the part of the video online world we live in. So the research ahead of time is very important, and particularly in investor conferences. But it's the same with professional trade shows and a strong commercial organization. Before they make any investment, on if it's a sales call or if it's a trip, you're having your sales team bring a key customer into your facility to review product ideas or get to know the company. Don't just do that haphazardly. I mean, ensure that you have as much information. Everybody in the organization has as much information about that target person or firm or customer as possible. So do your research, and then initiate outreach and digital social media awareness campaigns before the conference, and plan this out. Start a month out at minimum, and start kind of a drip campaign of getting the word out and the awareness about you and about your company and about your brand, and that you're going to be there. And ideally, you should be planning not just at trade shows, but even at investor conference, to do things besides your booth. Besides just showing up for the exhibit hours, that you've got some events planned. You've got some dinners, you've got lunches, or you've got breakfast meetings where you want to talk with a core group of clinical surgeons and use the opportunity where you've got a quorum to be there to talk about clinical multi-center trials that you want to do, or VAC committee, run the latest, VAC committee approval plans by some of your existing customers to get them oriented to that and get feedback on it. So do that. Organize special events, meetings, meals ahead of time. Get the invites out. Confirm the attendees. When you have those receptions and those events, take note of who's there so you can follow up, because not just the advanced planning and not just strong execution, but the follow-up is really important at these things.
What's the best way to get a surgeon to come to an event? Is it text, email, face-to-face, rep?
Well, I'd open that up to the group, but I would say it varies by surgeon. Email sometimes just doesn't work at all. So you kind of start there, but you have to almost rely. If you're a one-man band and you're just starting as a company, you don't have a sales force. You do your best, but you work as best possible to get. Ideally, if you've got a local contact for that customer, they'll know the best way to get a hold of that individual, and rely on them to get the word out and make it part of their responsibility. So, Mark, figured you would have some ideas on this one.
So doctors sell doctors. And so that would be my number one. Number two would be a relentless avalanche of messaging. Text, it works better than anything else, I think. So before the event, and that could be like set up like an automatic machine in the background. That's all.
Perfect. Eric?
I would call Ted Bird. Let him make introductions because he knows everybody.
Yeah, if you walk with me at NAS, I think this year is going to be I lost count. I think it's 30 something. So it's hard to go longer than 5 to 10 yards without bumping into somebody. But planning ahead. So when Eric and I work together, I've got this later on in my kind of recommendations, a schedule. Do it. Put your schedule together and make sure and line up ahead of time. Ideally, confirmations of your meetings, and then just stay on plan. And then when you don't have anything scheduled, don't go to Starbucks and go hang out with your buddies or go back to your room and take a nap, outside of exhibit hours. You're investing in the meeting, network, go to all the receptions, the welcome, venues, the other, even breakfasts that they're holding, even though it might be at 6 a.m. in the morning. You never know who you're going to sit down next to. You might meet a new customer, you might meet a new distributor or someone else in the industry. But, when I commit to going to a meeting, my voice is already hoarse from talking for 2 slides. It's completely gone by the end of the meeting because, you're busy. So let's move on to the next slide. Let's see. So investor conferences. So there's 2. One that you see very prominent today, particularly on LinkedIn, that they do a great job of getting their name out there, is LSI. Life Science Intelligence. Scott Pantel out of Orange County there in Irvine, started this a while ago, mainly for market research data. And he just started this kind of meeting idea about 5 years ago, where they started a meeting there in Orange County and they brought the Medtech community together, and it has grown. So I went, and then the pandemic hit. He did the first one, I think, in 2019, and then 20 had to take a break like everybody did, and then they came back in 21, and they have really grown this thing. And the last one that I went to was the most recent one in March of this year in Dana Point. There's a lot of people saying this is the new JP Morgan. LSI has become the new JP Morgan for medtech, and it's a medtech conference. So it's not pharma, it's not there's digital, but it's digital medtech and AI, but it's not pharma and other life science stuff. It's medtech, and they continue to enhance it and change it and upgrade it. It's not cheap, and that was the question that first came up that spurred me the idea. For me to put kind of this talk together was I think it was Alyssa Huffman saying, should I go to LSI, for my company? And definite opinions about that. I just come back from that meeting because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, I went and it was very expensive. They charge $5,000 for the industry, the companies to go and present per person. So if you want to bring you and maybe someone else from your company, that's 10,000. You can get a break, if you apply, early. And then they added kind of a booth, little tabletop booth thing, mostly for service providers. But that's like another 5,000 if you want to do it as a company as well. So that plus the travel, and they hold it, at the Waldorf, and but Ritz Carlton first in the world. So it's not a cheap place, but of course, as a startup, I found the Comfort Inn just down the road on the beach is quite nice. Although their bagels aren't quite as fresh as they are at the Waldorf.
Yeah, the rub on LSI is it's expensive, and even the presenters have to pay, and so it's a high bar. It's a high bar, and so you don't go. It almost forces you to prepare extra just to get your money's worth out of the meeting.
That's my message is that, and then the other one I've had some experience with is a UK-based company called LSX. They started to come over to the US. They did it for the first time last year in Boston last fall. They've got their second annual. They're doing it next week again in Boston called the World Congress, and they hold one in the spring every year in London and also in November. But they're a bigger tent. They do biotech, they do pharma, health tech, and med tech. And so med tech, med devices, and particularly orthopedic devices is a much smaller, piece of the puzzle in that one. And it's even more important to be really, really focused, about your objectives. It's less expensive, the price of entry is a little less. So my message here on these investor conferences, it depends on where you are as a company. Everybody needs money. That's part of the essential DNA to stay alive is obviously capital. And everybody needs that, and that's been a real struggle in the past couple of years. And so this is a forum where they're bringing capital together, and they're a focused audience, at this event for you to meet with. And they set up these one-on-one sessions. It's kind of like speed dating, throughout the whole meeting, where they provide an app that you can sign up for. You put all your information in, all the investors do. You can reach out and then confirm meetings. They assign you a table, and you basically get 15 minutes. I think you can schedule up to 30 minutes, but that's the max. And you just, it's a warm. It's like speed dating. It's a warm hello. The criticism is that the investors, the VCs, in particular at these meetings, are just don't participate in the app, and they're not responding to the invitations from the startups that are there to try and raise money, and so it becomes frustrating for the startup founders and the entrepreneurs trying to get those meetings. And so my message is, don't rely on just even using the conference app or getting there to have your meetings. Hopefully, by happenstance, by bumping into somebody. You have to really, as you do with any fundraising, successful capital fundraising campaign, you have to research, target, and identify the appropriate, investor fund that is appropriate for you. You may be so early stage that you're seed stage, or even pre-seed or A, and most of the venture capital, the institutional capital, has been growth capital. So they're willing to give you huge checks, but only if you have a big enough market opportunity. But you've already got the regulatory pathway cleared, and you want to just get the capital to ramp up and show momentum for your company, depending on whether you just want to grow it that way or you want to grow it in order to sell it. So a couple hands up. Tom, why don't you jump in there?
Sure. It's funny you should use the term speed dating. I actually went to a legitimate speed dating with Pismo. Are you familiar with Pismo?
No.
They're a fund, I think, primarily here on the West Coast. And we legitimately went through this speed dating. You came in, there were 4 or 3 groups, A, Bs, and Cs, and it was a horseshoe. and the investors were sitting here, and wherever you started, you had 7 investors that you met with. You had 4-minute pitch. You had 4 minutes with them, a minute and a half pitch, 2.5 minutes response. And out of the 7, I had 2 really good responses. But a lot of the guys around that table, they were representing other things themselves. So one of them, I came out with, I think, a really good PEO. Could be a good value there. And then one of the other guys, again, he had a great relationship with an investment bank that he was a partner in. So that could be, something along those lines. But it was very interesting. I don't know. I'd probably do it again because there are a lot of good guys in the room and a lot of industry guys that were, it was useful that way. But there is a legitimate speed dating thing.
Yeah.
was crazy.
It's the collision strategy, collide, just put them in there and mash them together, and something's going to come of it. You're going to come away with a few new relationships. So
Yeah,
David,
exactly.
David, you got a point?
Oh, yeah, actually a question, Ted. Other than these 2 that are apparently are very expensive, are there other investor conferences that you would recommend for startup companies?
It's funny because LSI, I've actually been registered twice for that. It's down here in Dana Point, at least the one here on the West Coast is, and it's relatively local. For me, I've never gone through part of it. I drug my heels along as far as I could before payment was due. So I never have actually made it to that. But there are some local things. For me, where are you located, dude? Or who asked the question? David, you asked that question? Who asked?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily geographically bound. Just curious if there's places that, well, at least I guess within the country.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
The only reason I ask is, I'm in Southern California, so there's a lot of access to capital. And these guys really were after local companies. And I think part of it, they can keep in touch and be personal. They could be in person to see what's going on. They can pull you into different meetings and things like that. So I don't know, again, back to your geography, I don't know if you're in that kind of environment or not. So
we could, David, we can probably get a list and we can distribute that. I've got one. I can just give it to Tiger and we can put it on the Slack channel because there's Medtech strategists. They hold a meeting. I think there's one coming up in San Diego, but they do one in Dublin, kind of an international, investment conference. There's AdvaMed, the Medtech AdvaMed conference that's become, quite a forum. I think it's up in Toronto this year. Then there's Keiretsu forums, there's angel groups, there's New York Angels, there's Bay City Angels, there's every probably area. If you look, just Google Internet it on family office or angel meetings, there's various opportunities to like Tom was saying, get involved in a local group. There's a lot of Midwestern groups that like to focus, regionally on Midwest companies in the Chicagoland area. So I'll put a little list together, and maybe the rest of the folks on BoneChat can add to it. And I think it's a good way to there's small local ones which I recommend every particularly smaller company participate in, and make yourself aware of also, each state or region usually has a life sciences or, medtech, economic, development and promotional, group. And so I live in South Carolina, so I'm trying to integrate myself with a group called SC Bio, and the South Carolina Research Association, but they're trying to help, bring this industry up and be more successful. In Boston, the Mass Bio group is famous for being very active, very useful in providing materials and subject matter experts. So I strongly recommend getting involved in all your local stuff as well.
The angels that I've been to have been really very, very helpful because they're all associated with other guys outside of the angel. We haven't fit into the angel fund at any time. We've had some offers at a lower valuation. We're a little bit further down the path than what they're usually comfortable with those groups. But they're all connected, so it's worth going and pitching and getting in front of the guys because there's, potentially something good that can come out of it.
Yeah. So
In
on
fact,
L,
actually, down the street from Tiger.
yeah, that's right. So my experience with LSI, I went in 21, 22, 23, 24. So 24 was my fourth time. Each time I kind of ramped up my activity levels. This year I had three different companies I was representing, so even more important I was very, very busy with meetings, first of all, but two of the companies were European companies that were being introduced for the first time. But I also took time, and I have, to get to know the organizers. So I've gotten to know Scott Pentel, Kelly Williams, Henry Peck, all those guys really well. And I help them. I try and help them. So when I ask a favor, I get it. So I was able to get one of my company founders from Europe on a panel meeting about women founders coming from academia. And that was help really raise the awareness for her company at Askell Healthcare. They have strong social media following and presence. So you get kind of plugged in with them. You can get some nice profile pieces. I'm considered an insider, I guess. I get knowledge of some of the new things they're doing, like special interviews they're doing in a private little room you might not know about. So I go find Blake Matrone and say, hey, do you have any more slots in your interview network? And then they do a great job of getting those materials, high quality level video, out onto the internet. And that's an asset for you. That's a marketing asset. And that's also for your pitch at LSI. That's the difference between LSI and LSX. They do a really nice job of getting good, high quality video. And my coaching recommendation to companies presenting is do not go up there and stand at the podium and take a set of notes. Basically, it's like you're on a TV show. You basically are talking to the camera, because actually in the room, there's hardly anybody there. You think it's a room full of investors, but as I said, most of the investors are not in the room. They're either in the speed dating, hall next door, frantically like meeting with each other, or on the
Online.
golf course.
Yeah.
Or on the golf course, perhaps they're not there, just is not responding. But the value is that 5-minute video that you have, that 10-minute video. If you do a really good job of it, and with your pitch deck and your elevator speech and how you present yourself, that's an asset for you to use. And then blitz your social media presence. Do some little interviews, take some nice shots, stop and get a picture with Mr. or Mrs. Famous and get it out there. In one of the fireside chat, person, Josh Makeower or somebody like that, drinking a glass of wine, go have a sip of wine with him and get it on LinkedIn. But network. Go to all the breakfasts, the lunches, and even outside of their app set meetings. And I've always come away after spending that money, those meetings, with a handful of very useful new contacts that I've met. Whether it's a service provider, maybe it's an accounting and finance, HR, support, idea for a startup company, or it's an investor that may not be interested, but like the story and introduce me to somebody else. And so those are my kind of themes on investor conferences. I'll move on. Okay, one more slide on investor conferences. This kind of some overlap from what I just said. Get in touch with the conference organizer. Make sure you get to know them well. They can make your life a whole lot easier. Start reaching out ahead of time. Put your downtime to use. So at the meetings in Boston, I had two other clients and people I needed to meet in Boston last year, and I went and met with them in person. So I wasn't just there for the meeting, and I got to see a Red Sox Yankees baseball game one night with one of my company founders. So put your downtime to use. And of course, like Tom said, in Orange County, there's a lot of medtech in that little corridor there in Southern California. But be massively prepared with your firm's messaging, your elevator pitch. I've got relationships now just from 5 minutes in an elevator at LSI from a company founder where it's like, oh, so what do you do? Oh, I'm in spine and I have a AI navigation system and I'm in Utah. I'm like, oh, I work for a company in Utah. So if we didn't start talking just in the elevator, but that was another connection. And make sure you follow up. Have whatever CRM or your own system. Just make sure you have. I don't have a tip or a trick of a special one that I use. I just make sure that you follow up, and don't wait a week or so. Get it going right away. If you do have a little sponsorship booth, make sure this is the same for trade shows. Make sure it's eye-catching. Don't just again go to Kinko's, FedEx, buy a tablecloth, bring some samples, and have a literature rack. I mean, that's so 1985. That is not the way to do it today. Have a video, have a little putting green, and have a little competition about who can win the sleeve of the Titleist balls if you hang out at my booth.
Yes, there's Ted. There's another alternative to not have a booth on purpose. It lets you roam around. It lets you have you can have a hotel room and invite surgeons to see. What are the pros and cons of having a booth versus roaming and having a secret place?
Yeah, so but it applies to both investment conferences. I would say, having a sponsored booth is probably better if you're a CRO, a marketing agency, or graphic digital video
services.
Yeah. So that's most of the sponsorship there. But I'll talk about alternative ways to a booth at trade shows, conferences, actually on the next slide. But let me just move on. Oh, this is just the list. Just over the next 8 weeks, these are all the meetings that I'm physically not going to be at, but I have a good reason probably to be at that start today, actually. Society for Minimally Invasive Spine Surgery in Las Vegas, through this weekend. American Orthopedic, Foot and Ankle Societies in Vancouver next week. Scoliosis Research Society in Barcelona, same dates, overlap next week. OSET, the Orthopedic Summit in Vegas, same dates next week, September 11th. Well, no, 13th it starts and goes through the 18th. Then the Interventional Pain is in Boston next week, the same dates as actually LSX, World Congress, right next to each other. One's at the Westin Copley, one's at the Heinz Convention Center. So, I could span both at the same time. And then in a few weeks time, the big North American Spine Society is in Chicago at McCormick Place, starting on the 25th of September through the 27th. And then again, these are more focused on my world, and these are bigger meetings. The Interventional Pain, American Society of Interventional Pain, started this isn't their annual meeting. Their big annual is in July in Miami, but they're doing this new little summit. It's called a collaborative summit. They're trying to bring surgeons and interventional pain people together for a one-day meeting in Nashville on like October 12th. So these are all sort of opportunities to interface on the professional side, and then best practices. Be organized. So if you're going to do a booth, these are best practices if you're going to have a booth. We'll talk about at the end about not having a booth and other things you can do. But again, be organized. Have a booth schedule. If you're going to have you or others there, make sure everyone knows what is going on and what the plan is, throughout the 2 or 3 days that you're there. When you're at the exhibit area, break the ice. Talk to the folks that you're meeting with, and start finding out, are they potentially a good lead? Maybe they're an existing customer, but don't just kind of let them peruse, on by without kind of breaking the ice and trying to introduce yourself and find more about them. Pre-qualify, as much as possible. This is part of the advanced planning about who's there. Get the advanced, attendee lists as part of your advanced, work ahead of the meeting. Videos are much better, and this is more for trade show, design and booth design. Video is much more impactful than just flat graphics and roll up banners. Engage with people that are passing by or at the meeting. Practice active listening. Make sure you're not just like launching in, or your people launching into your pitch, without having a good awareness of who you're talking to and whether you're wasting your time or not, or even if it's appropriate for them. And check in, at the end of day one, check in with your team. Say what's working, what's not. Do we need to pivot? Should we change? So these are all sort of booth activities. And then there's the non-booth. You should go to the meetings again to meet with people, but you don't have to have a booth. Again, that's thousands of dollars, the shipping, logistics, and everything else. And it's an anchor. You're tied to man your booth. You don't want to have, an empty booth when people are passing by. But you can go without having a booth, and you can do an alternate strategy, like Tiger mentioned, and have spend the money on a larger room, maybe a suite at a hotel nearby, and bring your materials, and you can hold one-on-one meetings, small group meetings, or even little demos at that suite, or events, a little cocktail reception. And then speaking of events, plan ahead before well before you get there. Make reservations. Go to OpenTable or whatever system there is. Just stock. That's what I usually do. Reservations for anywhere from 4 to 6 tables at decent restaurants that are near the convention center or main hotel, and then start to again match it up with your target list of people you want to meet with, both existing customers as well as new, and partners like distributors or others, or potential new distributors, and start filling in your schedule. So I'm sure we're going to have some comments and thoughts, and I want to get to what not to do, and I'm sure we're going to have some great stories at the end. But David, go ahead.
Just real quick, when you're scheduling those off-site dinners and that sort of thing, make sure you know the schedule of the society, what they have going on in the evening. I ran into that once, which was embarrassing as the head of marketing, having an overlapping event. And the society actually, in many cases, I forget, this might have been the American Academy of Pediatrics, but not only did they not like that, they actually prohibited, I think.
Yeah.
Some societies
Yeah.
do. So that's just a little something to be aware of that I ran into.
There's your first mistake. So
Yeah.
hey, I got a separate question with these professional society meetings. Can you get the database of attendees? Can you get names or emails?
They
Or is it
generally
highly
you can't.
protected. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can get it. They usually won't give you. Generally, they won't give you. I don't know. I'm open to the group here. I don't know what current practice is, but you can buy it. They'll sell it to you because, like, I'm a member of NAS, for example. They had a small window where they let industry people become a member, so I jumped on that, and I get membership rates, and I have a membership color badge, so it's not an industry badge. I don't get thrown out of my competitor's booth. But the members, basically, I can opt in for the marketing material to be emailed to me by companies that want to do that buy the lists. So they do sell them, and they do provide emails. So
you could, yeah. I mean, there's nothing to prevent you from sending out mass email with a call to action.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, if you can send out 1,000 and get 2 responses, which is fine.
Yeah, but it's worth putting it out there. But again, if you make it interesting to say, stop by Bird Medical's booth location, we're having a putting competition, or we're having a pickleball, contest, whatever it is. I don't think I could buy that much carpet space at NAS to put a pickleball court. That would be very expensive. But
well, the good old days, you could have a chance to win a Ferrari, but that's gone.
Yeah, or park the Ferrari, on just to stop. Well, we'll get to that. I've got that on the do what not to do's.
So Ted, this year at NAS is actually giving attendees a 20% discount if they'll allow NAS to distribute their name, email, and specialty.
Okay, so when you signed up for NAS as just a non-physician, they'll still give you a 20% discount if.
Yeah, that confused me a lot, but yes. But especially for the surgeons, they got a 20% discount as well. So
Yep.
NASA is compiling that list. I guess as long as you give them that permission, they won't give out phone numbers, but they'll give out email addresses.
Yeah. Well, let's go to this is the fun one. What not to do. I tried to. There's a whole bunch of pictures I was going to put on here, but you guys have seen this. Do not sit at your booth. Do not order a bunch of chairs or a lazy boy or a couch. So maybe if you're a massage chair company, you see those at some of these meetings. That's what they do. They're selling massage chairs. But don't sit there, work on your computer, and decide to catch up on your emails or continuously be on a phone or a Zoom call in the middle of the exhibit hours. That is not inviting. If you do that somewhere else in your hotel room or somewhere else, don't eat at your booth, even if they have a buffet. Don't go get your food and bring it back. And smaller meetings like ski meetings and stuff like that is different. You're inviting those attendees to come in and have their après ski snacks together with you at your booth. But at these larger professional society meetings, not recommended. Don't just cluster with your colleagues and be cliquey, with your group, and you got a customer that's walking by and you're just yucking it up with your friends. Don't complain to visitors. You never know who you're talking to. You just say, "Oh man, the dogs are hurting. I've been here for 3 days, and the aisles are empty, and I can't believe they don't have better padding, AAOS on these carpets." Just be positive. Be positive attitude. Makes a difference. And don't just copy other exhibitors. What other exhibitors are doing. It is such a sea of sameness. So it is important to kind of look to differentiate yourself when you're going to make the kind of investment in your booth. Don't look threatening. Don't sit there with your arms crossed and also design your booth so you've got a big high countertop table. You're blocking entry to come in. Make it warm. Make it inviting. And don't use booth babes. So Tiger and I talked about this. If anybody from the AAOS remembers in the 80s and even maybe into the 90s, I was actually a product director at J&J Orthopedics in the late 80s. I had casting, fiberglass and plaster of Paris. So my section of the booth for J&J was we had the babes that we would hire, the models for the orthopedic docs to come apply the cast. So we would have, depending on the models, depending on who the product director was that year, they would want to apply the cast. This is something today that is very sexist, obviously, and not welcome. But people think, well, that'll be attractive, to attract, and I should say for the female members of our society, even a male model in there for the female surgeons or the female customers, that's not the way to do it today. So I'm gonna turn it over. I think we've got probably a few examples of things that people would recommend in addition to my recommendations, and what works, what works today in your opinion, and what doesn't work. And maybe I want to hear a couple stories about what went really great one year or what went wrong. Any good stories? Nope. All right.
Well, I think didactic stuff is really important. So hands-on, anything that's moving in the booth, videos that are looping, or a chance for hands-on participation, I think is really important. Yeah. I mean, I used to work for Soldier Orthopedics. One year we decided to turn it into a golf theme, and we had Pebble Beach pros, and we had tee times every 5 minutes, and the surgeons were just lined up out, and surgeon would get a golf lesson and a video of their golf lesson every 5 minutes. And that was, so I think things to do for surgeons. Orthopedic surgeons are hands-on. I think you got to give them something to touch and feel. Mm-hmm. Eric, Mark?
Yeah, so similar to what you're saying, Tiger, but much more, I guess, product specific. When I was at Medtronic and manning the booths, we had a contest to see who could get the most leads, and I won 4 iPods, each year, just doing that. But what got me all the leads was having something that was interactive. And if I was at one of the exhibits in the booth that made noise, or if it had lights, people came in, it drew them in. It was like the bug zapper. But the thing that got me the most was something that had some noise to it.
Mark?
Mark?
So I got a story. Basically, one thing we did one year actually caused the Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons to change the rules. And that was in 2001, I believe it was in Orlando. We had a fairly limited budget, and we were introducing digital imaging. And so we spent $60,000, which was our entire marketing budget, to make these like X-ray sized bags that said the name of our company on it, and we handed them out so that literally by the third day, everybody walking around Orlando was carrying a black X-ray bag that said e-trauma. And I'm walking into the convention like on the third day, and these two, I think they were Japanese surgeons, were speaking to each other, and they said, "So who sponsored meeting? E-trauma?" And it was so effective. They changed the rules. From then on, if you're going to hand out anything like that, you had to pay the Academy. So, but there's one thing I wanted to show, and that is, if I could share my screen, I want to show you a graph.
Sure. Let me stop.
Yeah.
Let
Go
me
ahead.
show you something here. So I've long had the theory that the bell curve of development in orthopedics is very high, and that the longer we dance on the top of the bell curve of development, the harder it is to differentiate innovations today. What this graph shows is that the actual ground-breaking developments in orthopedics kind of peaked in the 2000s. And a lot of what you see now is innovations in efficiencies, cost savings, software, AI-driven things and everything else. And I think that that's had a real effect. I'll stop sharing, and I'll be happy to send you this graph and so forth. But I think it's had an effect on trade shows, because whereas in the 80s, you would go to look at a new hip or a knee or something new called an arthroscope or a shaver or whatever. And now those breaking innovations tend to be less. Not that they're not there, but I think it's had a little bit of an effect. And I think it's kind of what some of the conversation I'm hearing today says that also. And as far as renting a booth versus having a big event, I would much rather hold a big marketing event today than I would have a booth.
Yeah,
Thanks for
I
sharing.
think I would agree. Events and making your awareness, but you're there, you're present, but make it very evident on social media that you're there, and that's a good way to raise awareness. Maurizio.
So there were two things I wanted to mention. First, how to attract surgeons. I feel like hands-on things always attract them. In the Colombian Academy of Orthopedics meeting, there was a company that sold casts. They had a model, and they would have surgeons put a cast on them. That would always be the longest line for the booth, and those guys would always wait as long as needed to get to place the cast. But in reality, we've done like, hey, place this plate on a sawbones, and we have a leaderboard, and whoever does it quicker at the end gets an iPad or whatever. That always gets them very engaged, and it builds that competitiveness. So that's something that's worked for us in the past. And yeah, and with respect to what Mark was saying, two things. One, first, then I got in trouble because of you, because then on a AAOS meeting, I gave away free bags. And they came and they said like, hey, you're not allowed to do it. And they took photos of it, and I got like penalty points, or, the AAOS points you get, we got penalty points for that and everything. So yeah, we got in trouble because of you.
Yeah.
And the last thing is, I think the booths, the value of the booth being there is just telling people you're there who aren't there. Because if you, I mean, especially in something like AAOS or NAS, those things are so big, and the big guys' booths are so impressive, it's almost impossible to stand out. So it's
Yeah.
more about using being there and having a booth as almost like a credibility stamp that you use on the rest of your communications.
Yeah, and for me, with the focus on innovative new companies, the first place I go, to Academy or AAOS, and most of the business development people at the large strategics go is the new company aisle, and they want to see, okay, who's there, what's available, to learn about. So there's some value in that. Even people complain about, oh, we're in the back of the hall with the rest of the small little booths, but that the smart people, the people in the industry that know that's where you need to go to kind of see something new, as opposed to just kind of seeing what your big competitor is doing on the third floor of their booth with their 6 different conference rooms. Mark, David.
Dave.
Yeah, I know we're running out of time. I'll do this real quick. We had our significantly sized booths at some of the major events, trade shows. But to save money, one of the tactics that we employed was geofencing some of the smaller meetings, and so we would drop content to anyone who was walking in the doors at the convention center. And I had more than a few physicians I spoke to subsequent to these meetings saying, "Oh yeah, you guys were at that meeting. Yeah, I saw your booth. We were never there," but they believed that we were there and assumed that we were there because we had this presence by just dropping things in there on their phone. There can be notifications, posts, sponsored ads, that sort of thing, and that was very effective. So, and a great way to sort of save money, not having a booth if you want to be present at a meeting but not actually pay for the booth. So I'll throw that out there.
Great
I
stuff.
love that. Virtual booth could be the way of the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it for me. And thanks, guys, for hanging in there. Definitely a timely topic, but don't just discount it and write it off. Just think about all the ways you can maximize and optimize the money you do spend on these meetings. But it is an important decision to make. Is it the right time for your company, your product, and you to spend that money? And I'm happy to offer opinions to anyone that is interested.
Thanks,
Cool.
Ted.
Thanks, Ted. And we'll share those investor conferences on Slack for everybody.
Yeah, we'll get that list together. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. All right. Good topic. See you next week.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ted. Good job.
Have a good evening.